What is going on, college basketball fans? Welcome back to another video. Today we are making our March Madness NCAA Women's Tournament bracket. Last year we had Iowa as our national champion. I was banking on Caitlin Clark, made it all the way there and lost to LSU. And what was a surprising pick, I actually did not know that Mulkey was actually the coach of LSU. I try to keep up with women's. I kept up with women's basketball a lot more, me and my fiance did this year than we did last year. I actually thought Kim Mulkey was still at Baylor last year whenever I was making my bracket. So I'm definitely more updated on it this season. I've watched more games when I could, and especially because both of my teams are in the women's tournament this year, and neither of them are in the men's tournament, and that is WVU and the Marshall Thundering Herd. So I am excited to watch my teams play in this year's tournament, and I am more excited for it this year than in past years. So I'm excited to make these picks. Make sure you guys subscribe for more college basketball content coming your way, and let's get into these picks. So we do have the undefeated Gamecocks entering the tournament for the second year in a row, undefeated, and yeah, they are going to be, I'm guessing that's Sam Houston maybe, versus, I couldn't tell you, Prez. You guys might know, let me know. I could not tell you who that other 16 seed is, but we'll see if they can even put up 25 or 30 points on South Carolina. Next up, we have North Carolina versus Michigan State. I'm going to go with UNC in that matchup. I don't know too much about these two teams, to be honest, but I'm pretty sure North Carolina is usually pretty good in women's basketball as well, at least pretty decent. So I am going to go with the Tar Heels there in that one. Oklahoma has some studs on their team that I know watching Big 12 have been pretty good. Now, Florida Gulf Coast, if I remember right, they were in the women's tournament last year, so definitely a 12 seed to look out for, but I am going to go with Oklahoma here to win that matchup. Indiana versus Fairfield. I think Big Ten in women's basketball is so different than Big Ten in men's. Big Ten in men's basketball, you can't trust anyone, but Big Ten and women's, there's so many good teams this year. Iowa, of course, Indiana, Ohio State. I think Nebraska is pretty decent. Yeah, there are a lot of really good teams, and I'm going to go with Indiana here to get that win. Then we got Nebraska. We got A&M. And I just mentioned Nebraska, but I might actually go with an 11-6 upset here and go with the Aggies to defeat Nebraska there. Oregon State versus Eastern Washington. I would love to pick a big time upset like this, but I got to go with Oregon State here. Ole Miss versus Marquette. Interesting matchup. The Big East just isn't that good for women's. You know, you have UConn, who's very good in women's. Haven't been really the past couple of years, but I think Paige Buchers is back for this tournament. But I just don't trust Marquette, honestly. I'm going to go with Ole Miss, and then I am going to take Notre Dame over Kent State as well. Next up, we do have Iowa versus either HC or UT Martin, I want to say. Maybe Holy Cross versus UT Martin? Maybe I got that right. I'm going to go with Iowa. I mean, come on, Iowa is winning that game. Definitely. Then we got WVU versus Princeton. Now, I do know Princeton has been in like the past two women's brackets, which scares me as a WVU fan because I've seen them, but I got to go with WVU. We do have a solid team this year, a very good defensive team, gets a lot of steals. I think that we are going to be able to handle Princeton and at least get to Iowa, where we'll probably lose. Next up, we got Colorado versus Drake. This is a 12/5 that I'm going to take. I don't trust Colorado here. I did see Drake women's team did win the Missouri Valley on Selection Sunday, right before Selection Sunday. Maybe recency bias there that I saw them do that, but I'm going to go with Drake here to win that one. We got Kansas State versus Portland. Kansas State has been like the best team in the Big 12 this year. The Big 12 hasn't been great in women's this year, but I feel like Kansas State has been consistently really, really good in that league, so I am going to go with them. Louisville versus Middle Tennessee State. I might pick another upset here. I might go with Middle Tennessee State over Louisville. Maybe I might be picking too many upsets because not as many upsets usually happen in women's, but every once in a while a crazy one will happen. I don't think this one's too crazy. I'm going to go with Middle Tennessee State. Then we got LSU versus Rice. You got Angel Reese on the squad. I think they picked up the transfer from Louisville. Actually, yeah, that's a fun storyline there, Louisville, because the transfer point guard for LSU used to play for Louisville, I'm pretty sure. Then we got Creighton versus UNLV. I am going to go with UNLV to pull off that 10-7 upset there. UCLA over Cal Baptist for sure. And let's move on to our next region. So we got Texas versus Drexel, the Drexel Dragons. Ooh, I kind of want to pick that, but I am going to go with the Texas Longhorns there. Alabama versus Florida State. I'm going to go with Florida State here in that one, 9-8. Utah. Do I pick a second 12-5? I already just picked one. Are we going to see two 12-5s in women's this year? Probably not. I'll go with Utah here in this one. Gonzaga versus UC Irvine. I'll go with Gonzaga. Tennessee is very good for a 6 seed. I like them a lot. I'm going to pick them over Green Bay. I'll pick NC State over Chattanooga. And I think I'm going to go with Maryland over Iowa State and then Stanford, a very good Stanford team, to move on there. Next up, we have USC versus Texas A&M Corpus Christi. I'm going to go with USC. USC is very, very good. They looked really good in that Pac-12 championship game versus Stanford. And yeah, let's go with the Trojans. Kansas or Michigan, I'll go with Michigan to win that one. Baylor versus either Vancouver or Vancouver. It's not Vancouver. Is that Vanderbilt? Or maybe I couldn't tell you who. Columbia? I don't know. I'm going to go with Baylor over Vandy or whoever that is. Marshall over VTech. That is going to be my big upset in this bracket. Gotta support the Marshall Thundering Herd here in this one. Let's go. Biggest upset of this bracket in the first round. Give me Marshall. They're very, very good. They won the Sun Belt. Looked amazing. They have close to 30 wins. Come on now. Let's go. Syracuse versus either Auburn or Arizona. I'm going to pick Auburn. I'm going to pick Auburn to beat Arizona and then beat Syracuse in a nice 11-6 there. UConn to beat Jackson State. Duke to beat Richmond. Actually, no, I like Richmond in this matchup. My fiance actually told me that Richmond was a big-time sleeper to pick in women's basketball this year, so I'm going to ride with them a little bit there. And then we got Ohio State over Maine. Ohio State is a very good team there out of the Big Ten as well. Next up, let's get to our second round matchups. South Carolina versus North Carolina. South Carolina continuing to stay undefeated there, and I'm going to have them go up against Oklahoma in the next round. Texas A&M or Oregon State. I'm going to ride with Texas A&M a little bit here. I'm going to ride with Texas A&M a little bit here to continue pulling off the upsets against Nebraska and against Oregon State. Let's roll with the Aggies as a slight little Cinderella to the Sweet 16. I'm going to take Notre Dame over Ole Miss. Notre Dame is usually pretty good in women's basketball. They've pulled off a lot of upsets in the past, and I like them here in this region to at least get to the Sweet 16. I'm going to go ahead and finish this region. I'm going to go ahead and pick South Carolina over Oklahoma, and I am going to pick Notre Dame to finally end Texas A&M's run there. Notre Dame, you know, them and South Carolina have had some classic matchups, man. Classic matchups. Yeah, Hannah I'm not going to pronounce it right, but I have heard of her before, and she's averaging 23, 6, and 5, which is insane. This Notre Dame team looks really good, and I think I am actually going to have Notre Dame upset South Carolina in the Elite Eight, ending South Carolina's undefeated season. Second year in a row. Last year it was in the Final Four to Iowa. This year it is going to be in the Elite Eight to Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame has the players, has the team to be able to be capable of doing it. Like, Notre Dame being put in South Carolina's region is like, is such a dread for South Carolina, just because I feel like Notre Dame has been kind of like a nail in their foot for like so many years now. But let's have Notre Dame pull off what seems to be impossible and beat South Carolina. But we have seen South Carolina kind of have some struggles. You know, they almost lost to Tennessee in the semis of the SEC tournament. So I could see a world where it happens 100%. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a close game, but give me Notre Dame. Iowa versus West Virginia. I'm going to go with Iowa. Sorry, Mountaineers. I had to pick you in the first round for bias reasons, but I'm going to go with Iowa. Drake versus Kansas State. Do I want to have a little bit of a Cinderella here? Yeah, I am. I'm going to have Drake move on as the 12th seed there over Kansas State. Big time upset there. Louisville versus LSU. I like that storyline there because of, what's her name? Is her name going to be on here? I forget her name. No, it's Angel Reese and Moreau, who is another very good, that's an amazing front court, one of the best front courts in college basketball there. But LSU's point guard used to play for Louisville, so I like that storyline there. Next up, UNLV versus UCLA. I kind of want to pick that 10/2, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go with UCLA there to move on. And we'll go ahead and finish out these regions. I'm going to go with Iowa over Drake. I think Caitlin Clark is just going to have a field day all the way to the Elite Eight. And we are going to get a rematch from last year's championship game in the Elite Eight, Iowa versus LSU, where this time it is going to be tough because I just looked at, like, LSU has 2 players averaging over 10 boards a game. Like, I just feel like that is such a mismatch for Iowa. I don't feel like Iowa has the front court to compete with that. I just don't know if they match up good with LSU. And this may be crazy because South Carolina and Iowa are obviously the 2 most popular picks for a national champion this year. I just feel like LSU matches up really good with Iowa. As much as I would love to see Iowa and Caitlin Clark win the national championship, because I think this is going to be her last year in college, I'm going to go with LSU to go ahead and upset Iowa and make it to the Final Four. Next region, we got Texas. We got Drexel, or Texas and Florida State, my bad. I am going to have Texas win there. We have Utah. We have Gonzaga. I'm going to have Gonzaga win that one. We have Tennessee, and we do have NC State. I'm going to have the Lady Vols move on as the 6th seed. I think they are a sleeper 6th seed to look out for 100% in this region. Maryland versus Stanford. I'm going to have Stanford win that one. Now, we have Texas. We have Gonzaga. And I'm going to keep having Texas move on here. And then we have Tennessee and we have Stanford. And I'm thinking I'm going to have Tennessee actually keep on running and knocking off Stanford in the Sweet 16 to make the Elite Eight. And I am also going to have Tennessee knock off Texas to make it to the Final Four. You got to have some sort of sleeper. That would be a hell of a road for Tennessee to have to endure. But they showed me by almost beating South Carolina, they are a big-time sleeper as a 6th seed. And just the history of Tennessee, like, they used to have Candace Parker on their team. I just feel like historically Tennessee is very good in women's basketball. So I feel like as a 6th seed, especially the way they played against South Carolina in the semis of the SEC tournament, I feel like they could go on this run, beat NC State, beat Stanford, and beat Texas, where I feel like they are not the strongest of teams. Maybe I'm sleeping on them, but give me Tennessee to pull it off. Last region, we have USC. We have Michigan. I'm going to go with USC to win there. We have Baylor and Marshall. I don't think Baylor is as good as they used to be without Kim Mulkey as their coach. I'm going to go with Marshall to keep on dancing as the 13 seed in the Sweet 16. Go Herd. Auburn is who I picked in this to go up against UConn. I am going to go with UConn, Richmond, and Ohio State. I'm going to go with Ohio State to keep on dancing. And then we have USC and Marshall. They're finally going to end the Thundering Herds run there in the Sweet 16, make it to the Elite Eight. And then we have UConn versus Ohio State. I'm going to go with UConn here to move on. And then we have USC versus UConn to make it to the Final Four, our last spot for the Final Four. And I am going to have USC. I believe they have a player named like Juju who is pretty good on USC. Yeah, Juju Watkins averaging 27 a game. Okay, yeah, I really like this pick now. I really like this pick. That's going to be a really good matchup. Juju versus Paige Buchers. That's a fun matchup in the Elite Eight. So now we have our Final Four. Notre Dame, Tennessee, LSU, and USC. Probably not what you guys expected. I'm pretty sure most people will probably have South Carolina versus Iowa, which I can't blame you. I'm pretty sure like when I first saw this bracket, I was like, oh yeah, that's the matchup that's going to happen because I want to see that too. But I like to pick, I like to be a little bit different, try to be. And maybe I'm trying to be too different here in this bracket. Probably am. But I think that these upsets are possible. Like LSU has shown us last year that they can beat Iowa, and I think they're just a good matchup for them because that front court is insane. I don't think Iowa has the bigs to be able to compete with LSU. So I have them back to the Final Four. But I am going to have USC be able to knock off LSU in the Final Four, defeating last year's national champions. And I am going to have Notre Dame knock off Tennessee to make it to the national championship game, where we will have a very fun matchup between, Hannah Hidalgo. I know I'm pronouncing that right or wrong. Versus Juju Watkins. That is a very fun matchup. But ultimately, I am going to have Notre Dame as my women's national champion this year. I think a slight sleeper. I don't see a lot of people picking them, but I could see it definitely happening this year. And Notre Dame is just one of those teams, women's, where they get like a 2-3 seed and they just come out of nowhere and win the whole darn tournament. I think this could be the year that they do it. If they can get past South Carolina, I don't think that there is a team that they can't beat. So this is what I have for my women's bracket. Let me know what you guys think. I watched a little bit of women's basketball here and there. Like I said, I got a lot of knowledge from my fiance who did keep me updated, with some of these teams. So I think I'm going to do a little bit better than I did in last year's bracket. Let me know what you guys think. Subscribe for more college basketball content. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching.